thing I want to talk about is to do, so that's how to connect to Revit. I'm not going to talk about those a lot again, but I want to talk about doing some arrays and dealing with some sequences. Just one more note, which is again stupid. In Revit, you would orbit around with scroll click and shift scroll click, but here you would go around with scroll click and right click will be your orbit. So that's a little bit weird and stupid. Anyways, so let's say you want to do a number sequence. So if you right click and type in sequence, you would get a sequence. It has a start point, an amount, and step. So basically, if I give it a number and I copy that, and I copy that there. Now, I've got a sequence that is starting as 0. I want the amount to be 2, and I want the steps to be 10. So if I go get my watch node, I see what I have created here. Okay, so now you can see that I've got 2 numbers and the steps are 10. If I had 10 numbers and the steps was 10, you could get this result. The other way to see what you're dealing with is just to come down here, and then here's a list of the outputs it's making. You can pin this so that you can always see what it is generating for you. So that's how to make a sequence, and how this is useful for making an array is if I go back to my point by coordinates, and if I have a number for my x and the same number for my z, and if I connect this sequence to my y, you can see that I have now made a sequence of points back here. So an array of points is created this way. So if I want to make a grid, I would do that, but it's not actually making the grid for me. Are you guys familiar with the shortest, the longest, and the cross reference in lacing? No? Yes? Alright, so when you have, I'll show you that through examples, but just now quickly mention this. When you have 2 sets of data or 2 lists that are dealing with each other, let's say there's 2 items in the first list and 10 items in the first list and 10 items in the second list. The lacing shortest that you can see here as an icon with a line will connect the shortest path. So all the 10 will connect it to all the 10 over here. If you do longest, it will connect to the longest list. I'll show you an example. So if you have 8 and you got 10 on the other side, it tries to connect all the 8 to all the 10. And then if you do cross product, it will connect all the 10 not only to one on the other list, but to all of the items on the other list. I know it's a bit confusing. I'll show you an example. It will make more sense then. But the shortest will give you this kind of result versus the cross will give you this kind of result versus when the shortest will give you that. It will make more sense if I got 2 sets of points. So let me connect that, delete that, watch, have my point here, have that number there. Okay. Connect this, and then I'll make a copy of that over here and connect that and connect that. Okay, and I want to make a copy of that, give it 10, connect it there. Alright, now I've got 2 sets of points. Both of them are coming from the same sequence. I want to change that so that they're coming from different sequences, and one of them is bigger, so one of them is 15, and then connect that to y. Okay, now you see I've got 15 points on the top and 10 points on the bottom. There's a line function or a line node that gives 2 points and connect them through a line. Because it's set on the shortest, it will connect the first 10 points to the first 10 points at the top. If I go longest for the lacing option, it will try to connect all 15 to the 10, so it will make the longest list your priority to connect. And if you do a cross, it will connect everything that is possible to connect. It's a bit more clear through this example. Okay, so that's how the lacing works. And this is how you would do a sequence. There's another way of doing sequences that a lot of scripting people are really interested in. I find it a little bit confusing at start to work with, but as you keep using it, you will get used to it. So instead of saying, I'll just get rid of everything else here, just move to an environment there, and just get a watch. Okay, so 0 I connected to watch, it was just giving me 0. If I change this to 0.1, now it is 0 is my start point, 1 is my end point. If I change that to 10, again 0 is my start point, 10 is my end point, and the steps are 1. I can do, I can just copy this and do 0, 0, 0, 0, number 2. Then here I've got my start point, which is 0, I've got my end point, which is 10, and then I've got the numbers of steps in between, which is 2. If I make it to 5, you can see 0 to 10, 5 steps to do that sequence. Another one is if you do this and you do that, and then you connect this, then you have your start point here, you got the number of steps there, and then you got your step sizes here. So step size is 5, you have 10 steps, and you start from 0, so 0, 5, 10, 15. Those are easier way of accessing sequences versus doing this. I found this still being more interesting, especially if you have sliders connected to them, but this is more of a scripty thing that people keep using. Something that is interesting for me and I trust very much is that you can, by trust I meant respect, you can, instead of putting numbers, you can do variables in them. So instead of 10, I could put in A and enter, and as soon as I do that, it asks me for an input of A. Then I can have a number that would define that A value for me. So if I say 20, then I can connect that. So instead of this 10, it's replacing that with that number 20. And then if I, so that's my end is 20, I can change that to 40, and then it will get updated based on that. So that is interesting that you can do things with variables. So let's say I do A, point, B, point, number sign, C, and then it's asking me for A, B, and C, and it will do the same thing for me with that result. And it gets even more interesting when you know that you can define A, and C, then it's reading one of the variables for 2 functions, and it can do more interesting thing in that. So this is just something that you have in your back pocket for future to use. Maybe to start it's easier just to work with these sequences. There is another way of doing those sequences that is through your range, which has the start, end, and step. This one has start, amount, and steps, but this one has start, end, and a number of steps in between. So these are 2 different ways you can create number sequences. Okay, so let's go back to this example, and let's get them both from the same sequence to Y, and I will delete that. I want to increase the number, I want to change that to slider, so it's a number slider here, and it's a bigger number. Actually, it should have been an integer, but it still works, so that's fine. Then I will connect them through lines, start and end. Now you can see how Control B, move this over there, Control B, move this down here. Now you can see how with adding those, my sequence will move. I want to change my sequence to a range just to get a better result, have better control on where it's ending. So start, end, and steps. Change my end to 20 and use that for my Y value. Please stop me whenever it's confusing. Okay, the steps are not big enough. They should be bigger numbers, I assume. maximum to give me 10, that, okay, that's 100, now that reads better. Okay, now I've got this. I can easily go and use a loft function and connect these lines to get a surface out of them, and then I can start to play with the points from up and down. So through under core, you can see there are a lot of mathematical things that you can play with and get interesting results out of them. For now, I'm going to use a sine function, and it's getting an angle and giving me the sine. So I want to change the values that are going to my point to a different now you can see if I make my steps smaller, starts to form that. That may be a little bit more interesting to do. Then I get them even smaller. I don't need to go to 100. I make it 50. Oops, not 500. That's why you're not on automatic all the time, because it's almost frozen. Okay, 50. All right. Then you can even do, I don't know, maybe you do a cosine for your bottom pieces. And again, same. So what is this radian to degree doing? Is that it's changing a number from a degree value, from a radians value to degree. If you guys know the mathematical differences, that's the pi number, how that would control your thing. And then you can see how this is changing that. Then again, just to make it a bit different, you can always multiply your numbers with stuff, and maybe by 2. Then I'll connect this to that. Okay, you can see that now these are bigger graphs on the bottom, smaller ones at the top. If I give it more resolution there, you can see the result better. But as soon as you do a little bit of things here, you see how all these wires are out of place and you don't know how to deal with them. So always make sure to organize your environment and do groups whenever you're defining a function that you know you're going to go refer back to. So try to always be clean in organizing how the nodes are connected and how all the systems are working, and try to follow the sequence of the data flow so that your script is cleaner and you have better control over it. So this is maybe better understandable versus the first one.